Hello, everyone. Welcome to Be Well and Thrive. Today, I am joined by Joe Kleman. He is the owner of Move, which is a movement and bodywork type therapy. He is a licensed massage therapist and developer of the core movement system, which utilizes a mind and body connection. He likes to say that he has people come in to move together rather than have someone move or work on you. So Joe, thank you so much. I might have butchered that, but thank you so much for joining me.
No, I
Uh,
really, I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And I would love for you to introduce yourself, help people understand kind of the path that you taken to get to where you are. It is such an interesting and very unique path that you took, and I love the way that you look at the human body, the human mind, and I'm so excited to share you the with the audience today. So thank you again, and yeah, so just a background as to where you came from, how you got into massage therapist, and how you got into kind of what you're doing, and then we'll maybe hopefully dive into that as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. So I came from a very extensive background actually in logistics. So I spent 10 years of my childhood from 6 years old or about 8 years old till I graduated high school with my family in events. So we were doing tents and tables and chairs, setting up weddings and parties for different people. So right from childhood, I'd figure out how to get people moving around in a space to fit comfortably within this space and move within a flow. So that you had a certain amount of tables that could fit under a certain space with a certain amount of chairs. That way people could move around in there. So that was my first 10 years of my life, was really looking at how people move in an environment, in a space. And then I spent 2 years in the military and then 7 years in supply chain logistics with Kohl's department stores, Pier 1 Imports, Coke and Pepsi, a bunch of different production lines. And I had 50 people working for me. So I was sitting there with two 21-inch monitors with 8 windows open, 4 on each monitor, and I was moving the world around in front of me with my fingers. And I always thought that was fascinating, that everything I'm doing on my computer is actually moving in real life somewhere else. So it was a really fascinating job I had for like 7 years. And then I just got tired of it. I resigned, and I um, I just kind of quit one day, and I sold everything I had down to I had 2 houses, a car, like everything fully furnished. I was making $70,000 a year in my job, and I just like sold everything. And I had a car, a bicycle, and 12 boxes of stuff left, and started completely over. I went all the way back to like zero because I had all this stuff, and I realized I wasn't happy. I had no like, it was like, here's the American dream. I'm 26 years old. I have all this stuff, and I'm not happy. So I threw it all away and started over again. And my goal at the time, I actually started a handyman business for a little while, trying to get that going. And because I built my first house when I was 20 years old, and so I know how to do all the windows and siding and shingles and wiring. I did all that stuff myself. So I was like, I'm just gonna work on houses. And I tried that for a while, and couldn't quite get it picked up enough to like survive on. And then my goal was to move to the Caribbean. Like when I was leaving my corporate job, I was like, I want to move to St. Thomas. I want to move somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere very warm in the sun and just away from all of this. And so I was like, but how do you afford to live down there? Because I know it's really expensive to live down there. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to massage school. So I went and signed up for massage school, and I was like, I'm going to move to the Caribbean as soon as massage school's over. And I finished my massage license, and I moved to St. Thomas like shortly thereafter that. I was down there for 4 months, and ended up getting hit by a car on my motorcycle. So I got sent back home with a broken leg. And they always tell you when you go to the island, they said the island will tell you when it's time to leave. And I was like, you could have told me a little nicer. I would have left, a little easier without having to have a broken leg out of it. So
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I just really it was a terrible student all of my whole life. I was a DNF student, C&D student most of my life, all through school. I have a half an associate's degree. And then I went to massage school, and I graduated with a 3.95 with honors. And I was like, what's the difference? And recently I realized what the difference was is that I'm a tactile person. I never actually, because I hated school so bad, I never learned how to read and write. So my reading level, my writing level and speaking was at about an 8th grade level. So I never really comprehended what people were saying. So I just, because I learned logistics as a child, I saw how everything worked in real life. I didn't know how to explain it. So I did 7 years of corporate logistics with never passing pre-algebra. I had no idea how to do math at all. And now I'm like moving $10 million a year of freight around all over the country
Yeah,
with no idea how to do math. So it was
that's
really
incredible.
fascinating. So as I started going down the massage path, I kept studying different things and I kept finding all these inconsistencies in what we were learning. So in massage school, they say with adults, you know, massage everything and push everything towards the center, everything towards the heart, all the fluid and everything, right? But then I went to study pediatrics and they're like, you can massage any direction you want. And I was like, wait a second, like, when does that change? Does our fluid at like 3 years old all of a sudden switch directions or something? Or like, I don't understand. So because I was trained in pattern recognition for most of my life,
Hmm.
I spent the last 12 years studying every avenue of medicine, from mental health to massage to movement, infant fetal development, anything I could find, and picking the pieces out of it, picking the patterns out of it, finding what made sense, what didn't make sense, what didn't match up, and then use social media to find all these people all over the world, even yourself, and you learn something from each master, each person that you find, and then you whittle it down to these 15 or 20 people that you find credible, and you keep studying from them, and then you gather that information, you add it to your practice, and you keep doing that. And it's worked amazingly. Like I just kept learning all these different things. I got into muscle testing for a while, and I was like, all right, I mean, it's complicated and it's all this crazy stuff. And then they lost me on it. They said this one thing to me that totally, like, because my logistical brain, they're like, but you don't have to test the sequence. You can just test in north, south, east, or west. So like in directions. And I was like, so it's not really a sequence. It's just you're testing in physics. It's either up or down or right or left or whatever. So you're not really testing anything. You're just saying you're just exercising the body in a different way than it was originally
Hmm.
moving.
Hmm.
Well, then the test is so subjective because you're going, oh, that was weak or that was strong. Like, but I can tell you that you're weak and then make a weak test out of it. So it was like,
Hmm.
but what I did realize out of it was that we were getting the effects because we're asking people to move in a way they hadn't normally moved before. So when I started using the blocks in the cube, I was like, wait a second, like if I give people things that are challenging to do and take away all the rules and rights and wrongs, everything away from it, and just say, here's 4 objects. You're going to use your right elbow to touch these 4 objects, and your feet can't touch the floor. And you can do it however you want. It doesn't matter. Just do the best you can. And you just load it by variables. You load it like you're safe on the floor. Use your right arm. You can't use your left knee. And you just keep taking different variables away. And they have to rethink how to move their body in a different way. But you're validating them for their experience. You're validating them for their try or their attempt at it. And if they make a mistake, it doesn't matter because they didn't hurt themselves. They didn't hurt me or anybody else in the whole world. So kind of falls in that essence of play a little bit because who really cares if you accidentally touched the floor when you weren't supposed to? It doesn't really matter. So it's been really interesting to take all the rules away and allow people to be creative again.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
just have the whole world of like my way's better than your way and your way sucks.
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's all too common. Yeah, I know one of the that is one of the things that when we had our initial conversation was definitely made me think for a good. I feel like I thought for like a week about some of the stuff we talked about regarding how the body moves, and now that you're saying it again, I'm thinking of my 7-month-old daughter who is learning how to move, and we're trying to help her move the best she can, but at the same time, like you're saying, what is the best she's going to learn? She's going to learn, we're
She's gonna
doing
figure
these
it
things
out.
and yeah, exactly. We're putting her in these positions and saying, let's try and get her to do this a little bit more. But then, I talked to my dad and he's like, how did you learn to crawl? You just figured it out. And it's like, yeah, they're going to figure it out. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's that
um,
we try to overanalyze things,
right.
right? Because you're a movement person, you're trying to say, well, that's not you're doing too many of the same things. You have to do this more, right? But like they're an organism, they're a separate organism
Right.
right now,
Right.
and they're just out there discovering their world, and
Yep.
they're just,
Yep. Yeah.
so the
It's a
longer,
beautiful thing. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to observe. And definitely, yeah, just keeping that perspective of letting that exploration happen. And it's very cool. And just being happy whenever she does anything new. Right. Um, so yeah, that was one thing. I want to get into kind of your blocks and your movement system. I also want to get into some of how you're already mentioning it a few times of that positive feedback or that validation of having that mind frame and that mindset of how much that affects the body. And it's so true. So let's start with your core movement system. Tell me a little bit about how you got into, like, where did you start with? What is it? One, so people kind of know. I've seen it, so I understand what it is. Maybe describe it so that the audience has a little bit of an understanding of what it is, kind of where you thought of it, where it's grown to, and where you see it going.
yeah, absolutely. So the reason I call it the core movement system, because it's the basic functions of math, right? So in a logistical standpoint, if I'm watching you move around, you're an uncontrolled variable to me moving through a space of controlled variables. So that's the logistical thing, or the event thing, right? Because you have to be able to move through this space however you can, right? So the other way I say it is we're a ball of energy moving through space relative to something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it, because you're just another organism to me. We have to be
Mm-hmm.
able to remove ourselves as person, to be able to see another person objectively and not judge them from what they're doing subjectively,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because for me, the hardest thing for the longest time was to take, by taking all the rules away and the rights and wrongs away. If I give someone something to do and they do the wrong thing, I can't stop them now, because I took all of my power away.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're saying no rights or wrongs, no wrong, no, you can do anything you want and go. And
Yeah.
you're like, holy shit, you didn't do anything I just said. But it doesn't matter. They're still moving differently than they ever have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their brain heard me give you a specific command, and then they didn't do anything the command that was said. So there's
Right.
your essence of play, because they know that they're in a safe place. I've encouraged them. I've allowed them to do anything they want. Their brain heard me say, you can do anything you want. So they don't feel bad for doing the wrong thing, or even are aware of doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just out here having fun, and it
Mm-hmm.
allows them to move any way they want. So that's why I like Da Vinci's quote that says, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. And with most people having this complex bias of like, it has to be hard or it's not worth it.
Right.
Well, by taking all of the rules and rights and wrongs away, all of a sudden people get lost in this puzzle of going, wait, the only rules I'm giving that I have are the ones I'm imposing on myself.
Yeah.
Right? So most of us are in our own way, like all the time, because there's no right or wrong way to get around. Like same with watching your daughter move around. She's
Mm-hmm.
not doing anything wrong. She's doing it how she's figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taking everybody back to your child is going from point A to point B however she can. So what's the difference if the baby's going from point A to point B, an adult is going from point A to point B, or say you broke your ankle out in the middle of Umstead, you don't have your phone on you and you have to get back to your car. Is there a right or wrong way to get back to your car?
No, you just got to
No,
get there.
you got to get there.
Yeah.
It's like same thing, an elderly person fell in their house and the phone's 20 feet away. Are you going to be there going, see, you're not even getting to the phone right?
I hope not.
Right? That's the absurdity of most of what we tell people. Because we're trying to say that this magical thing that we created in some PT school or some new fad thing that we're doing is the right way to heal the body.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying my way's better, and like everybody else's is terrible, right? But that's me saying my way's better than your way, and that's all it is. So I didn't want any part of that, so I went to math. I'm like, we're going to talk in variables, right? Because a person to me, any other person from you out is an uncontrolled variable, because you have no idea what they're thinking or what they're going to do until they actually do it. So that's the core thing. That's all the way back to basics, all the way back to the most basic functions of life is math.
Mm-hmm.
Is I don't care how you get there, just do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost my train of thought a little bit of what else you asked me about. So
It's okay. So you kind of got into some of the other thing I was going to ask about in terms of, so maybe we can go into that a little bit more, but you say no right or no wrong, not imposing limitations on people. There's no, perfect motion. You didn't say that this time, but I remember you saying that.
Well, it is. I mean, there is no perfect, right? So
Right,
there's
exactly.
only precision. So that's
Right.
what I had to get in
Well,
my own head, because I had a lot of perfectionist
right.
attributes
Yeah.
myself. And one of the things that really helped me was that we can only be precise. As a human
Mm-hmm.
being, there's no way of being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want to be perfect, you're giving up the opportunity of choice. So there's always going to be a good or bad. You have to make the choice of going right or left. So you're going to make a mistake because you chose right instead of left. So people have to get through the idea that if you want to be perfect, you have to get rid of you'd have to become a tree or some other animal that doesn't have a choice of what they're going to do. Right. But as people, we have the choice of going up or down or climbing the steps or taking the elevator. Well, what if you could have taken the steps, but you got in the elevator and the elevator gets stuck and now you're trapped in the elevator for 3 hours, right? So like there's always the chance that something could happen. So you can only be precise. You can only be like accurate.
Mm-hmm. And all this came from math, or did this come from, I know, like you'd mentioned, you'd studied other fields, psychology, movement, other fields. Did that come from your observations of math and you kind of translating it to the human or this being that we are, or did it come from any sort of philosophy study, psychological study?
Well,
where did all this kind of come from?
So I get a lot into I study a lot of Eastern philosophy. So a lot of the Tao, the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you've ever read any of that. And like we are all it. Like we're all part of the same thing. So it's getting the idea of like seeing us all as the same thing. And then Stoicism is Marcus Aurelius. You ever heard of his stuff? So he has a phrase in his meditations journal that said, anything of humankind, always look from a vantage point above it, or to be able to see the big picture. So as you start learning to do logistics, you're realizing it gives you almost a God feeling where you're like moving. That's why when I was in front of the computer, you're moving all these things around, moving hundreds of millions of dollars of stuff around, equipment around the world, around the country, around the borders and everything like that with your fingertips. Right. So that's the big picture point of view. So if you can remove yourself to a zoomed out perspective, looking at people from the outside in, and then you can see how people respond to certain stimuli. So the one thing that's been very fascinating to me is the pandemic, because of how long I've studied people from the outward perspective. Because right now, because we'll talk about I'll say this part of the cube or the blocks is that, and you've seen this before, is that if I say touch all the red balls in the cube with your right hand, right? That's one stimuli. That's you're reacting to that one stimuli, touch red with right hand. Okay. Well, right now in our world with the pandemic, 7.4 billion people are all touching the red ball with their right hand together. And every single person's touching the red ball a different way.
Hmm.
Because
Say that.
we're all affected by the same thing,
Right.
but we're all psychologically handling it our own way.
Right.
So
Thank
people
you.
are going, you're not doing it the right way. You should do it
Right.
my way.
Yeah.
And that's what we're watching right now. So like for
Yeah.
me, I can zoom out to the whole world and see how the whole world handled it. And I can pick out
Mhm.
countries and watch how each country handled it. You can watch out each demographic, each city, each state, and you can zoom in
Mhm.
or out to how
Yeah.
much you can watch one person handle it or the whole world handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
So you can just collect tons of data right now just by watching people handle one of the most stressful things they've ever gone through. Because there was something I brought up. I did a video about this actually right in the beginning of this, because I had some of it and numerous other people I talked to right in the beginning of the pandemic. They're like, I'm having a lot of really deep childhood flashbacks.
Hmm.
And if you think about this, your brain would want to map back to something it can compare to what you're going through now. But you've never, and anytime you're alive, experienced the whole world shut down. So your brain is trying to find something similar. When was the last time the world shut down? What did I do last time? Well, you didn't never experienced this before. So you're trying to go back and go back and go back to find something that makes sense.
Hmm.
But now we don't have a guaranteed future either, because we don't know what's
Yeah.
coming out of the other side of this. So at one point in our lives, right now, the whole world is doing yoga at the same time. Because we
Yeah.
don't have anything to go back to. We don't have anything we're guaranteed to go forward to. So we're all present right now. And every step you take, every decision you make right now is all brand new.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's definitely an incredible time and an experience of experiences. Hopefully we can all kind of get through it, and yeah,
yeah.
I hear you. So yeah, that's very interesting how you kind of, yeah, you've taken it from some of the philosophy and kind of taken yourself and try to take other people out of themselves so that they can just be when they're working in the cube or with the blocks. That was kind of the question I had asked earlier, was what is the cube and what
Oh,
are the
yeah.
blocks, and where did you kind of what promoted
Where'd it come from?
that? Yeah, where did it
Yeah.
come from? What is it? Where did it come from? And then where do you see it going?
Yes. Perfect. Thank you for reminding me. That's great. So,
Glad I remember.
so where did it come from? Which is really interesting. So the blocks happened about 6 years ago now. I actually had 2 inguinal hernias repaired. And the surgeon told me a week to 10 days, it'd be all back to normal, everything will be fine. Well, 6 weeks later, I had to go back to him because I couldn't lift one leg off the floor. Like I had no stability whatsoever.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you walked in here, right? And I was like, like, that's all I'm supposed to have. I can walk, I'm good. So I go to PT at the VA and I met this amazing PT, and I was knew all this stuff already because I'd already studied all this, so much
Mm-hmm.
of my own work or like going along the way. And he actually told me, he goes, I feel like I'm in PT school again. All the names of the tests, everything that I'm getting ready to do. And like, I was like, so he gave me the 2 phrases that changed my whole life in regards to how I work with people. And what created all this is paralysis by analysis and keep it simple, stupid.
I've heard those before.
Yeah. So those are the 2 things that created what I created off of those phrases. So I left there. He gave me, because I already knew all the stuff. He goes, come back in a month. I don't need to see you all the time. Work on this stuff. So prior to me leaving, he tests my front plank at 9 seconds face to the dirt. Everything I had in my front plank was 9 seconds. So I left there and I was like, I'm kind of an inventor. I like to experiment with things, and it's usually my own body that I'm experimenting with. So
Mm-hmm.
I went into this empty yoga studio, and I had already taken classes in infant development or infant movement. I took classes in dance that are like what's called contact improvisation, which is all randomized movement. So it's kind of like the cube or the blocks, but with another person. So you're actually creating a dance out of it.
What is that called? Contact what?
Contact improvisation.
Improvisation. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's fascinating. I'll share a video with you afterwards.
Yeah, it'd be great.
You can pass
Post
that
it
along to
too.
people so they can watch
Yeah,
it. It's
I could put
amazing.
it in the link. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The two of my friends that got me into it, he's actually he finished his PhD in astrophysics last year. And
Very cool.
so contact improvisation is basically juggling people. You're juggling another person with you. And it's
Huh.
absolutely fascinating to watch. So I already learned that, learned infant movements and the idea of play. And I went to a yoga studio that was empty all the time. And I grabbed yoga blocks. And those were the first blocks ever were yoga blocks. And I just set them out around the floor around me. And I would do all these quick little motions of like, use your right hand and like do this. And I would like see how fast I can move around and like touch different blocks. And I did that about 20 minutes a week, or 20 minutes a day, like 3 times a week. And I went back to PT a month later. I didn't do any of the planks he told me to do. I only did what I created. Only
Yeah.
this random movement I did on the floor because I was like, I want to see how well this worked. And I went back to him, and in 1 month doing no planks, my plank was 1 minute and 10 seconds.
That's awesome.
So I was like, wait a second, how did that work so well? So then I just kept playing with it. And I kept like, that's where this all started from, was like that feeling of being able to like move however I wanted to. And my girlfriend at the time she does Feldenkrais and she does a bunch of other different, she has her bachelor's in dance. And I showed her and she goes, I've never seen anything like this before. And I was like, cool. Well, you know what? I'm just going to keep figuring out what this is all about. I'm just going to keep working on it. Well, then I learned about constraint-induced movement therapy, which they use for strokes. So CIMT is used for just the upper extremities, just for the arms, where they have the affected arm. They take the unaffected arm and put it in a sling or on a glove on it, and then they make the person use the affected arm as much as possible for the neuroplasticity piece of it.
Yep.
And I was like, but why are we only using it for the arms? Why can't you use it for the whole body? Right? If it works so well for the arms, why can't we use it for the whole body? So that's where the next piece came in. Like, use your right elbow to touch all the blocks, but your feet can't touch the floor, or your right knee and left foot can't touch the floor, or your right hand can't touch the floor. So now they're having to remember what not to use and remembering what to use. So that creates a small distraction of like paying attention cognitively to what the task is. And then remembering what they're not allowed to use to accomplish the task. And you can literally just change the variable around, like use this, but don't use that. Use this, but don't use that. You can change the distance of the blocks. You can change the height of the blocks. You can use a timer and say, do 20 touches with your right elbow in 30 seconds. Or 20 touches with your left elbow, your feet can't touch the floor in 15 seconds. Right? So now you're adding time to it. You're just changing mathematical variables to the person.
Yeah. And it's all just kind of at random, or do you have, at this point, have you built a system?
So what I watch, the restriction piece, because you have to be intuitive with it a little bit, actually quite a bit, because the idea of loading, right? We talk about loading a lot. Like, I think people get overloaded with an exercise that's more than what they can handle. So if we're a little more intuitive, we can see that they're uncomfortable. We're trying to keep the movement that they're doing to make themselves feel better, where they're not feeling bad about doing it. And I think a lot of times, so I get people come in here, like they've had bad experiences with PTs, not throwing anybody under the bus, but had bad experiences where like I went there and every time they wanted me to do something, it hurt really bad. And they're like, well, you have to keep doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like,
that before as
obviously
well,
you're loaded too high and this person doesn't want to do what you're doing. So are you really benefiting at all from the movement at that point? So this just gave me a way of taking the loading psychologically down to, you know what, you're safe on the floor. There's no way you can hurt yourself. It's up to you how you want to move. It's up to you how fast you want to move or what you want to do. Here's what I want you to try. Right? We're taking it all away and giving them all of the power back. 100% of the power back. I'm just going to tell you what to use. It's a task. There's no rules. do the best you can. So you psychologically watch, intuitively watch how overwhelmed they are. And you're trying to keep them just a tick above being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That way, in the stage of struggle, and that's where our brain is changing, that in that period of struggle, trying to get something, trying to accomplish something that
Right.
is hard.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want it too hard, because then they don't want to do it. So then you keep adjusting it. You're going, okay, so you're moving around a lot faster than I expected. So the next thing would be a physical change. And the physical change is watching what they use the most. So they depend on their right hand all the time. Okay, so maybe a restriction would be you're not allowed to use your right hand next time. Or people want to crawl or walk to the targets instead of rolling around or moving in more instinctual ways or randomized ways. So maybe you'll take a knee and a foot away. Well, now they can't stand or crawl because you took a knee and a foot away.
Mm-hmm.
So that causes them to have to pause and think, how can I move my body without a foot or a knee?
Gotcha.
Right. And then that makes them uncomfortable for a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll pause for 10 or 20 seconds going, well, how the hell am I going to get there?
Yeah. Cause it's like, so that's super neat, because that's super neat, because you're taking a person and you're taking, whether it's a compensation or just a very, very learned and ingrained movement behavior, and you're taking it and you're saying, okay, yeah, you do that because that's easy for you. Well, let's make it a little harder and challenge you. Okay, that's how you do it. You walk there. Okay, let's take this away. And then you break it down to the point where people are being like, okay, I've never moved like this before.
You've never moved like that.
Yeah, you're basically creating new, exactly like you said, you're doing that constraint-based movement therapy where you're making people say, okay, how the heck am I going to move? And you're creating new neural pathways, you're creating new motor planning, and people have to use their body a very, very, very different way, and probably use muscles that they've never or very infrequently used, because they have just done what has become ingrained and easy, and kind of like a stream on some dirt. It's gonna create a pathway and follow that pathway all the time. And so that's what our body does when it comes to movement patterns and nerve patterns. And so it's pretty neat that you're kind of carving out a new pathway for people when it comes to that. That's super neat.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really, I see a lot, because a little tidbit of info about me is, like, I've gone almost 30 years of my life out of 41 years without television at all. Like a solid amount of time without television, or without, like, I've only been to the movies like maybe 36 times in my entire life. So, like, I've lived without screens most of my life, without pop culture, without the news, without all this stuff. And it's interesting to see that all the technology that we've created has created less and less and less movement out of the human body, because everything comes to us. If you think about it, you can sit in your recliner, yell at Alexa, order all of your packages, all of your groceries, have it delivered to your front door, and have the kids bring it to you, and you never moved at all.
We're going to be like WALL-E, where we're all in.
Oh my God, WALL-E is one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, it's disturbing, but, like, it's so true. And I'm like, you guys have to move your body. You're an animal.
Yeah.
You're an animal. You have to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my biggest thing. I was like, we need to, like, because I built the cube. We'll talk about that in a second. When I built the cube, everybody kept saying, like, why'd you build something so big? Why don't you just make a VR game? And I was like, because you're missing the whole point.
Yeah.
Because we keep zeroing everybody into this, like, world of here, not way out here.
Right.
We're taking everybody out of the forest. So all I did was build a digital forest, or build a plastic forest. So the cube came. I was actually snowed in one time. I was in Raleigh here, and I got snowed in because, adult snow days.
2 inches or something like that.
Right, something like that. And I'm usually with friends, but, like, this time I was home by myself, and I was like, you know what, I need to move around a little bit. So I pushed things out of the way in the living room, and I was reaching to the top of the like through the end table to the corner, and then I was reaching around the couch to this, and I was like going like through this and up to that, and it hit me. I had this vision in my head of the cube, and I was like, I need something three-dimensional, right? That we can move around in instead of just the blocks on the floor. How do I make it harder for like professional dancers or professional athletes to move around in, that they still get something out of it?
Mhm.
And I have a lot of people that still like the blocks more than the cube, because I've been told the blocks are like doing jujitsu by yourself.
Yeah.
That's what it's been compared to.
Yeah. You're on the
So
ground
the
grapple.
cube is like, so the cube is a brief description of it for people is
Yeah, I'll
it's a
post
7
a
foot.
link to a picture to like your website in the show notes, so that if people are interested in seeing a picture of this, they'll be able to
Yeah.
access
So
that.
it's a 7 foot cuboid, so 7 foot cubed. And then it has 10 cables, elastic cables through it, and each cable has 5 colored balls, 5 different colors on each cable. So there's 50 targets within the cube, and there's 10 cables, and there's different hook points around the frame. So the person can come in and either create their own space that they want to play in or move around in or do their rehab in. So now they created it for themselves. So now they want to play in it because now it's their thing, right? We're giving them the power back again. Or if you're working with like a professional athlete doing like active or active recovery, you can set it up how you need it to what you're trying to get out of them. Or say in stroke therapy or in PT, you could set it up how you need someone to be able to what you're trying to get them to accomplish. So then you would design the space based on what you need. But it's a fully customizable space that way. And then they can move around in there and you can give them instructions. So, but that's just the cube is just playing in the forest. It's if I say, say we're a tribe in the Amazon and we're almost out of food, go out in the forest and find all the food you can and bring it back to us. And they're going, well, where do you want me to go? How do you want me to get it? Like, what kind do you want? They're like, it doesn't matter. Just go out and get all the food you can and bring it back.
Get some food, yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't matter. We need it. Go get it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no difference than me having you in the cube and saying, okay, there's no rules, rights or wrongs, do anything you want. But we need all the apples and all the oranges. But you can only grab the apples with your right hand and the oranges with your left hand. Go in there and get it as fast as you can and bring it back to me.
Right.
Right? It's the same thing. So we're essentially hunting and gathering again.
Yeah.
So I played this actually, remember this when your daughter gets a little older, because I played it, my grandmother played it with me. The cube was a game my grandmother taught us when we were like 5 and 6 years old. And she would sit in the living room in a chair and she'd give us 5 objects, 3 to 5 objects. And you had to remember what the object was and bring them back in the order that she gave them to you in. So like a fork, a red ball, a piece of clothing or whatever. And then they could have descriptions of like a red piece of clothing or a blue ball or whatever. And then we'd have to race around the house. The kids, like all of us, would race around the house to who could get back to grandma first.
Yeah.
So remembering the order of things, you're remembering descriptions of things, you're remembering like where they're at, where you're going to find them, bring them back. So we were doing all that when we were little kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And then then it breaks down to, like you're saying, you're asking people to move in a different way, but then also you're taking them out of that paralysis of analysis or that potentially that fear of moving, because you're just saying, hey, no, just do whatever you got to do. Just do this for me. I don't care how you do it. I just want you to do it. And it allows people to kind of come out of a shell, so to say. I want to ask another question about, you'd mentioned kind of athletes and maybe a higher level patterns or even the stroke patterns. And then maybe we'll get back into play a little bit, because play is so important. But when it comes to your commands and the things that you're giving people to do, are they specific to the any sort of patterns or activation that you want to get out of people, or is it purely getting them to move, or is it purely trying to kind of, like we were talking earlier, break down some of the movement behaviors they have ingrained in them?
So really the cube and the blocks are really going back to Eastern philosophy a little bit. It's really the master student situation, because two children can play in the cube together and give each other simple commands that they both understand and play a game. But the student can stay here and the master can now become a licensed psychiatrist for 30 years working with a child.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they're watching, they understand what this human's doing more than what the child understands the other human is doing. Right? So the commands can change based on your level of education or what you're trying to accomplish out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So for me, because I'm not a licensed mental health professional, one of the things, this really helped me along the way, and I don't know if you follow any of the biopsychosocial stuff, and everybody's like, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not whatever. I'm like, one of the things, I have a friend, a good client of mine, she's been a psychoanalyst for 40 years. And I asked her this question, like, what's the best way for me to not overstep my bounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not leave my scope of practice in regards to working in the cube and stuff. And she said this, and she said, you can ask somebody how they feel, but not why they did something.
Mm.
So,
which is kind of your whole thing anyway.
Right. I'm like, how do you feel right now? I feel confused. How do you feel right now? I feel happy. I feel sad. I feel depressed. I'm like, okay, it's a short answer.
Accept
This
it.
is me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, cool.
But if you ask somebody like, I've had my own experiences with it because it's a brand new thing. I can't go on Google and say like, hey, if someone had this experience, what did you guys all find? Because it doesn't exist, right? Like
Right.
This is a huge expansive thing that can get fed information as more people use it in different avenues of medicine. But I burned the house down. And I don't know if you know what that means, but like she basically like lost it. Like she was snapping cables and like kicking things and smacking things and like just completely like overwhelmed her.
Mm-hmm.
I like changed too many things too fast.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't ask her, why are you hitting everything? What are you doing? What's going through your mind right now? Like, what are you, I can't ask any of that. So we stopped.
Right.
I put her on the table. We did some massage, some light touch, and just kind of some like, relaxed her out, just calmed her down. And she ended up sleeping in her car for an hour before she could drive home. Like she was way out there.
Yeah.
So like I've had my own experiences with it, but like I can share those with people as we go forward with this thing, and it keeps growing and more people in different professions use it. And now we have this database of like, have you experienced this with somebody before? Like, yeah, I have. Like, here's what I did, or here's like, we have this whole database of knowledge that way that we can like build off of, this whole library of Alexandria, essentially. Now we're now learning so much more about people than we ever have before. So really the commands, going back to that, it's really what you're licensed or capable of asking or trying to get back out of it. I work with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, where I do mostly more cognitive. It's very slow. Like the older people, elderly, and like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, like I'll move everything up to the top so they don't have to like step over anything. They can duck under it. And maybe they can't duck that far, so everything's up within the first 2 feet of the top, so they can kind of walk underneath of it. Or it's around the sides, so they have this open space underneath of it to like work with. You're just trying to take away something that they might trip over, right? But they're still getting the cognitive effect from it. They're still getting the thinking and the processing of like remembering this and use this and go here and do this. There was I'll share this because I think it's important to this. I worked with this Parkinson's patient. Her and her husband came in. She's had Parkinson's. And I think it's very crucial in therapy, in all forms of therapy. She didn't remember what her name was when I asked her what her name was. And speaking is movement. And I think a lot of people forget that. So like a Parkinson's patient, they have trouble speaking because it's still movement, right? We have to articulate our mouth to make sound. And so she came back in the second time and she remembered her name because I had helped her in the first session. And then him and I talked a little bit. And then I asked her again. And I asked him, I was like, why doesn't she remember her name? And he goes, because most people in the world aren't as patient as you are, and I have to answer for her. So we need to slow down.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know we're pushed through insurance. I mean, you guys are, and we're trying to like get more people in so we can charge more, get more patients through the door and all this, but we have to slow down.
Yeah.
Because I think we're hindering our healing process by like trying to rush the person to get better.
Right. Yeah, actually, I mean, I am not contracted with insurance for that's one of the big reasons is you can't provide someone the attention, the energy, the care, like you said, when you're back to back to back to back with people, and just within the last 5 minutes of a session with one person, you're already looking at your schedule. Okay, who do I have next? They're here. What am I going to do? Yeah, definitely slow down. Absolutely. That's pivotal. I think actually listening to a person, I mean, in school, they teach you that if you just listen and ask questions, a person's going to tell you what's wrong.
Yeah.
With them.
Jordan
They're going to tell you what,
yeah,
you're going to have to do way less of an evaluation if you just listen to what is going on, what they're having trouble with. And you can figure out, okay, this is what I need to look at, or this has happened to them in the past. So let's kind of go down that road.
Right.
So yeah, so I totally appreciate that. That's wonderful to hear, and it's so huge that you take that time and listen and are patient with people, because that is.
Well, that's how you find everything else out. It was like, how do you help people so fast? I was like, I listened to them.
Yeah, isn't it an amazing thing?
It's incredible.
I do listening. Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's this book right now I'm reading or listening to from Chris Voss. It's Never Split the Difference. It's about negotiations.
I'm listening to that right now too.
Are you? Well, when he said, listening is one of the most active things we do. And like, it's very true that so many people are like, they think of it as this passive thing. I'm just sitting here listening. But I was like, no, if you're really listening, you're trying to understand where they're going with it and how you can steer the conversation. And there's this thing I have, because I used to watch it all the time. One of the guys I used to work for, he was terrible about doing this. And I call it the silent cutoff. And our biases, our cognitive biases, like get in our way all the time, because say you just took this amazing CE class last weekend. You learned all these really cool things. And now your new patient is coming in and they're talking to you and they say something in the first 30% of what they're getting ready to tell you. And you're going, ooh, I learned that last weekend. And now you're putting this whole thing together for what you're going to say next based on what you learned last weekend. But what you stopped doing was you stopped listening to them, because now you're only worried about what you're going to say next, and that you're super excited that you just learned this really cool thing that I'm going to do to you.
Yep. Yeah.
It's the silent cutoff. Like the person still thinks you're listening to them. A lot of
people. That's the majority. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. So you're mentioning, so two things kind of in one. You're mentioning that there's a database now with people who are putting information and experiences into it. Is that different?
Well, I'm working on that part. So that's not live yet.
Okay. So that's like different professionals, different. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Because right now it's just me using it. So I want more professionals using the cube or experiencing it with what their knowledge is, right? Because there's always going to be someone that has more knowledge in a different area than you do.
Right.
So this allows us to keep building this idea around watching the organism move. Right. We spent so much of our world in therapy, in whether it's mental health, having someone sit on the couch and talk to you, or lay on a table and me poke needles on you or scrape you or dig my elbow into you and you're not moving. So I have no idea how you actually, the only chance you have is watching someone walk from their car to the building. If you can see, if you can watch them out your window to see
Mm-hmm.
how they really move, because you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to watch them from a removed point of view.
Right. So they don't
Because
know you're watching
once they
them.
walk into your office, they're walking exactly how you want them to walk.
Right. Right.
Right. So this is a chance, if I give them a task to do and they have to unwind it themselves, that you get to watch them in this situation of movement unwind your puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And now you get an insight into how they think or how they think about their body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where normally we're just so like, you put them on the table, I feel something, we're going to work here. Well, how do you know what that even is?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I find, it was another one today that just came in, brand new person. And I would say it's in the 90 percentile of people that come in that have this problem. And you have already watched some of it happen with your daughter, is our midline. We don't work on the midline enough.
Cross
Most
midline, you
people
mean?
think, yeah, most people think, I had this PA in a few weeks ago. I was talking about the midline, about crossing our midline. And she goes, I just thought that stayed it forever after we figured it out. And I was like, it doesn't stay because you stopped using it.
Goes away, yeah, very
It
easily.
goes away because all of our technology is forward facing. So we walk this way, we drive this way, we cook this way, we like sit this way. Everything we do is right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not twisting, we're not spiraling, we're not reaching for things, we're not leaving the space that's right in front of us.
Right.
So then we end up with this really dense, strong, whatever the hell you want to call it, right side, because we're a right-sided world.
And those movement patterns that you're talking, that you break down as well, right?
Because you can see it.
You do the
I
same
always say
thing
this
over and over.
once I tell people this, you'll see it everywhere. But you realize that the people that have runner's knee, that wear the brace around their patella tendon, it's almost always on the same leg on every single runner you'll see.
I'm trying to think, but the last time I saw it, I saw a person with both knees. They had
both knees.
So
yeah, that's a whole different animal there. But
I've been seeing quite a few people with both knees. But
yeah.
So is that kind of where you see it going, where it's a multi-professional movement system, where maybe a psychologist is working with it and seeing, or someone's working with it where they can say, okay, this is that you've done this movement pattern. Now, how do you feel and why do you think that? And then there's maybe a physical therapist who goes through and says, okay, what did you feel with that? And in terms of muscular use, and then say, okay, let's maybe create some sort of commands or patterns that may be favorable for a certain body movement.
Right, because you're looking for something more cognitive, right? Because agility is cognitive and movement mixed together, right? It's how fast can we think about the situation we're in and move as quickly as possible, right? If I throw a ball at your head, how fast can you move out of the way without getting hit, right? That's our agility, right? So if you're trying to get agility, you would do speed plus cognition plus movement. If you're just trying to do cognition, you can keep it slow and make it super complicated, right? Touch red with your right hand, blue with your left hand, orange with your right knee, and green with your left foot. But you're not allowed to use your hands and feet to touch the floor, right? So now remembering 4 things to touch with and what colors they are, and 2 things you're not allowed to use, right? So the cognitive can keep expanding to how much you can process, how much you can remember of what you're supposed to be doing. Well, then you can add just movement. You can add slow movement, right? Because a lot of times slow movement is way harder than fast movement.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you're trying to slowly control yourself in this space.
And then you tell them to stop, and you're like, wait, what? Stop, reverse. What? I can't.
Yeah. So you can now have categories of agility overall. You can have cognition. You can have exercise based in agility, exercise based in cognition, exercises based in slow movement, fast movement. Here's maybe someone that's training a professional athlete can go, okay, well, I want something that's psychologically hard.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a command that everybody's shown that has a reaction of being cognitively hard? So
Mm-hmm.
I can mix that cognitively hard command
Right.
with a speed workout,
Right. Right.
right? And now
Yeah.
you're increasing your agility that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I can't wait to see where it goes.
So the crazy thing is that, so I don't know if you had a chance to read that article I sent you from the guy in London, but he was saying with me that the therapy piece, he believes the therapy piece, and as he explained it to me, I fully understand why, because that goes back to the validation of mistakes, the validations of feelings and emotions
Mm-hmm.
have to be witnessed by another human to be healed from it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't heal from a machine. We have to be witnessed by another human of and be validated for the mistakes that we made or for what we
Mm-hmm.
decided to do and going, congratulations, you did the best you can.
Right.
Right. So that's the therapy piece of it. But the performance piece of it, the agility piece of it, the cognitive piece of it, the blocks in the cube, you can add IoT, Internet of Things, and machine learning to it and play in the cube and be in a constant state of adaptation for your entire life.
Mm.
Because the machine learning would constantly learn how fast you're playing, how well you're doing cognitively, how fast you're moving, and continually adjust your games for you every single day by the millisecond.
Mm.
Because each target would make sound, light, and vibration. So you can adjust the volume of the sound, you can adjust the frequency of the vibration, you can adjust the intensity of the light. So like my goal of playing the cube is to be able to play in absolute darkness and just like listen for where the sound is at.
Whew.
So you could train our ability to survive in the world
Yeah.
as finely
Yeah.
tuned as you want.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever talked to the military about that, but that's interesting. You're, yeah, it's so interesting. I'm thinking about, because I know what the cube looks like. So if anybody, please, take a look at what the cube looks like in the show link. Visit the website so you can kind of get an idea of what we're all talking about. But when you say that you shut the lights off and you just listen to the sound, and I'm thinking, okay, how are you gonna run without running into cords and hitting yourself
Right.
in the face with because there
Yeah.
like you mentioned, it's a cube with a bunch of cords in between. You're basically dodging laser beams like they do in the action movies. So but if he's doing it in the dark, he's doing it with none of the lasers visible. um that's interesting.
Yeah, you have to move
Let's
slow and you have to be very diligent, like very matter of fact where you're going. And like,
Yeah,
okay, here's the
yeah.
thing,
But then if you
But
hit the chord, it is what it is. It's not right or
right,
wrong, right?
exactly.
So you just kind of do what you need to do. Um,
Right. Well,
I
that's why I
want to
always
kind of
tell people like one of the biggest takeaways from a lot of this is empathy,
Yeah,
right? Because like playing with the blocks, if I take your feet away from you, right? There's people that live without their feet every day for decades,
yeah, yeah,
right? So like you're uncomfortable right now and you're only losing your feet for 30 seconds.
yeah, yeah. Wow.
Where there's people that don't have their arm or don't have their one whole leg or they don't have either leg and they have to live their life without this all the time. And you're doing it for a few seconds or like a minute.
Yeah, right, right.
So gratitude of being able to do the things and have these, because now when you're done, the gratitude, gratification you have of going, I have all my parts,
Right.
right? But the empathy
I'm
that
so
you
happy
feel
that I
for
can
people that
walk
don't have
away.
all your parts, they don't
Yeah,
have all their parts. So,
yeah,
they're two really
yeah.
big
And
takeaways from it.
so many levels, so many levels. Makes me want to go play around with it now. Um, how does massage fit into all of this?
So
Or is that
what I
just
kind of,
something to get you to St. Thomas?
well, so massage played a part in it for a long time, and then I got bored with the massage part, and so I had to figure out what was next. So what was I really going to get out of this, because I was bored with it. right? Because really anybody can really do a massage, right? You can teach somebody how to do massage, right? It's not complicated. People do great massages, but it's still just massage.
Mhm.
So, but what I was noticing is that everybody's like, well, I go to this person all the time because they know my knots. And I'm like, but why do you have the same knots?
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Like,
my question too.
right? Why would you go to the same doctor for 10 years and not feel better? Um, so I was like, well, how do we like change that? How do we like,
Mhm.
why do we keep fixing the same thing? So I was like,
Mhm.
well, if we started doing movement, then all of a sudden the knots went away.
That's
And I was
right.
like, wait, now I don't have to massage anything. Well, then I
Yeah.
started doing the blocks in the cube. And then all of a sudden I realized that these really super complex problems that people were like seeing all these people for, and like, everybody was like digging on them and like needling them and scraping them, all this stuff. And I'd have them on the blocks for like 30 seconds or a minute and then put them on the table, and there wasn't nothing left to work on.
Right. No,
And now it's just,
absolutely.
and now it's just a massage.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And then, I mean, also you think about some of the passive modalities that some professions do, myself included, you with massage. That's a person at rest too, right? So yeah, warm them up, let them play, and see what they feel after that. First, what knots are left over. Two, like you said, why are these knots here? Why do they keep coming back? Why are they the same thing? And then yeah, and then three, definitely movement changes how our body responds and how our muscles respond and how our nervous system responds. And so it's definitely going to adjust accordingly. So I'm totally with you, man. I definitely use some of those modalities, and you still use massage, but I have been finding myself trying to use them with a little bit different of a reasoning, maybe a little bit more focused, a little bit laser focused as to why I'm doing something, and then trying to get people off the table and moving for sure. So why should someone what type of person should come see you if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, this is kind of interesting, or what type of people do you say should come and have sessions in the cube or with the blocks and do some of this mind body connection and movement and body work therapy?
So a lot of the clients I get for the most part is chronic pain. I work with people that have been to everybody in the book. I've had people with chronic pain from anywhere from 40 years to 10 years to, all different time spans. And they're like, it wasn't from a lack of trying. The woman I worked with, she was in a car accident like 40 years ago. And she always said, she goes, why weren't you born when I had my accident?
Mm-hmm.
And it took me like a year and a half to see her once a week, but I haven't seen her in almost a year now. Like she has a
Wow.
completely normal life. She has her whole life back,
Yeah.
so it was a year out of 40, that took me to get all that back. So, and
Wow, that's incredible.
give me 1 second. Since we're running a little late, I have to hand something to somebody real quick.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
going to stay on here with you.
Sure.
Cool. So yeah, so a lot of chronic pain, and then like a lot of athletic people will come
Mm-hmm.
in because a lot of my athletes that come in, they weren't really ever taught the midline piece.
Right.
So they come in and they're
Which is
like,
huge
they're
for
trying
sports.
to, right, they're trying to golf or they're trying to play racket sports or whatever, and their whole right side is jacked. It's like
Yeah.
you can see that they're using their entire right side of their body. It's very split.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, it's not like you're not activating muscle, right? Like this whole like, you're activating the muscle, you're activating this muscle. And I'm like, you're not
Right.
activating muscles. You're like, they're always active.
You use
So I'm
them,
not
yeah.
saying that, you have to turn the left side back on. Because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we're using both sides of our body every day. So it's not that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the neurological connection, that corpus callosum, that split through the midline of having coordination to our left side
Mm-hmm.
is what
Yeah,
I
that's
see the
important.
most. I have this test that I
Coordination
do.
for
I'll
sure.
call it a test where it's not a muscle test because you can replicate it every single time. Like I've done the same thing probably close to 1,000 times now because I've helped so many people with it. And all it is I have the client lay supine or on their back, and I'll test their right side first because that's their dominant side. And I just have their leg bent at a 90 and then their arm straight up in the air, and I squeeze them together. I like push their arm and leg together. And I was like, you just have to resist me. Try as hard as you want. And they're just like locked in, they have it. Like it just works every time. And then I'll go to their left side and it's just like, whoop, they can, I was like, it's not like resist me or test this. It's just like, try as hard as you want. I'm going to try to squeeze you together. And there's just nothing. It's just like collapses in. I was like, all right, I'll do this with people sometimes, depending on like, you have to feel out the person you're working with. I was like, all right, I'm going to use just one finger this time. And like, they can't even resist one finger with their whole arm. And it's just like falls in. And then I'll do,
serving a slice of humble pie.
While they're laying there, I'll take their same knee that's bent and I'll hold my hand on the opposite side of their midline. And I was like, take your knee and touch my hand. Take your knee and touch my hand 5 times, back and forth 5 times. And I'll do that with the elbow 5 times across. Do that, and then you reverse and do the other side. And you go back and do that same test, and they're like, no problem. Like you can like crank on them as hard as you want. And they're like, what'd you do? And I was like, you crossed your midline.
Yeah,
like,
woke
that's
up
it.
Yeah.
You know, so there was this one that I learned, because to me, everything in loading is perspective, right? You have to be able to see things shifting in different points of view. So, like I'll do this one with people do cat and cow and child's pose mixed together, like for yoga. And they're like, why are we doing this? And I was like, because if you were doing it standing up, you'd be doing squats. But if you're on your hands and knees, you're doing cat and cow and child's pose. But it's still just a squat. Now you're just unloaded. Now you're not going to fall over doing your squat.
Yeah.
Then as you get better at that, then we can now move you to a different position, and now you can do squats again. Right? So the other one I learned actually from a ballet teacher on how to learn spotting, where they hold their arms out and they look at their hand, they follow it over and touch and then go back. Well, I'm like, well, what happens if I lay them on the table and do the same thing? So now I lay people on the table with their arms out and I say, take this hand, this arm, one arm can't move, and this arm can do whatever it wants. And all I want you to do is take this hand and touch this hand, however you want to do it. And it's the most fascinating thing to watch how people process how to get one hand over to the other hand.
That's right.
And one of the most disturbing things that happens probably 60% of the time is you get this. Well, I can't do that. And I was like, well, move your body. Like we think our arm, so many people think our arm is just our arm. Like it's literally just this.
For people listening, he reached his arm across his body to touch his bicep, and again the instructions would have been touch your hand to your hand without, and so they just didn't.
They have no idea.
They didn't roll across midline. Yeah. All right, let's do some more stuff about you a little bit. What are your 3 favorite things about patient care?
Being able to change someone's like point of view of themselves, right? Giving them some sort of resiliency back, or their own self-care, or their self-efficacy back, right? What are you capable of doing, or what do you want to be capable of doing again, right? So I always tell people, it's like, I'm never going to tell you not to do what you want to do. My job is to get you back doing what you want to do.
Right.
So many people say, you should never run again. You should never play golf again. You should never, like, why would you want to tell somebody that? Right? Like their whole goal, their whole like function in life is to be able to golf again, or to be able to run again. And now you're just going to be this other person in their head going, yeah, they told me I'd never run again. They'll tell me never run again. I'm like, what can I do in here to get you to run again, to help you run again? Right? Whether that's running a mile in 15 minutes, right? And then whittling it down from there, and we'll keep working on it. But that's the thing you want back, is to run. So what is my job, is to get you to run again.
Right.
right? Not tell you you should never do that ever again. I
Right.
will share this one little short story because I had a woman that came in. It's the only person I've ever told not to run again until she got something. I don't remember what was going on, figured out. And never saw her again after the first session because she played lacrosse and she never came back in. Well, the guy I was working for called me like a year and a half later, and this woman had come back in looking for me. And she was out playing lacrosse, running across the field, never was hit, didn't step in, didn't trip, did nothing. It was just running across the field. And she broke the head off her femur.
What?
Yes.
Dang.
And I was like, well, I told you not to run again. And
yeah, that's why.
But that was the only person I ever said that to. So
yeah, well,
but
spot on.
So like we're supposed to give people hope,
Right.
Not false hope, but like we have to be realistic,
Absolutely.
And I attend Death Cafe, or did a lot for the pandemic, but it's like Death Cafe is trying to normalize the discussion of death and dying. So we always call hope the H word because people hope for something to happen there's no way it's ever going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But sometimes hope is all we have. And like, that's what you're trying to help people with, is saying like, there is this little glimmer that you might not be able to do what you used to do, but let me give you something that as close as I can to
work towards
helping you do that.
Yeah.
Right. Or replacing that with somebody.
Yeah.
And the other, like another big one we talked about earlier is listening. People want to be heard. Like we have such an issue with that around our world right now, where we become such individualized people where we only have communication digitally primarily. So when someone else is coming to you person to person, to be able to learn about this person, to be able to learn about another human and take lessons or take something from them, right? Because just as much as we can give to them, we can get back from them and use for the next person. But if you stop listening, you're missing, you're giving up all the chance to be able to take something from this person that you met. I don't know if you heard anything about the gamifying, like live life like a game. So there's a whole podcast about gamifying your life. And I live my life that way. So each person I meet along my journey for the day, from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, is my mage or my sage or somebody I met along the way that's going to teach me something.
Yeah.
And it might be a client, it might be someone on the street, it might be whoever, but you're walking up to this person, you're having an interaction with another human, and they're going to teach you something about themselves.
Right. Yeah.
You take that away and you add it to your book, you add it to your repertoire of knowledge that you can now share with another client. They're going, hey, I learned this from somebody. I've never heard about it before, but what do you think? Like, wow, that's amazing. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Right. That's our job.
Yeah. That's so cool.
I think we get so lost in these protocols, so lost in this, like, I have to do it this way, I have to do it this way, I have to do it this way. And I'm like, everybody's different.
All right.
So, and then I think my last one is to spend more time customizing what we do for somebody. So a friend of mine has been in terrible chronic pain, like on disability for almost 4 years now. And they always ask her like the whole pain scale thing. I'm not a big fan of the pain scale anymore either, because it's so one dimensional, right? We're not going into the life of this person. You're just asking them, what's your pain today? You're like, well, it's a 7.
Right.
Well, she'd always complain about it. She's like, they ask me what my pain is. I'm like, now or 3 hours ago, right? You never asked me how I felt 3 hours ago when I felt like I was dying and like my leg was going to fall off.
Yeah.
You're only going to prescribe me my medications based on my 3 that I'm giving you right now while I'm in here.
Right. Right.
So we're not listening to them again. It comes back to listening. We're not taking in the person's whole account of their life.
Or at least asking the right questions.
Right. And that's why I love
being intrigued enough to want to know. Right.
So right. Because that's the whole, like,
you have to be intrigued enough to want to know, to ask the right question, to be able to listen.
Right. The biopsychosocial thing, like people love it or hate it because they can't figure it out, because it's dehumanizing the therapy. You're going, here's this
Right.
person, like, how can I help them based in variables, based in math? How can I like care for this one person the best way?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're only thinking in one dimensions, you're going, what's your pain scale? What's a 3 out of 7? Or it was a 7 now, or earlier it's a 3 now, or whatever. But did you ever ask the person that you're trying to help with chronic pain if they live in a house they feel comfortable in? Do they feel safe? Right? Because that would matter. If they go home and they're in fear of their life and they're coming to you saying, I have chronic pain.
Right.
How are you going to heal their chronic pain if every time they go home, they're afraid they're afraid for their life, or they're in a really terrible situation?
There's no way.
Right.
There's no way. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
So
Yeah,
there's
that's
so many
so important.
dimensions to it. That's why I like
Yeah.
the spoons idea. Have you ever heard, you've gone down the spoons with
I feel
instead of
like
the
you
pain
mentioned this.
scale, it's how many spoons do you have?
Okay.
So the
And what is
spoons
it?
would be I'm waking up this morning, I have 9 spoons,
Okay.
right? Well, I need to be back home in bed by the time I'm down to 2 spoons. Or the next day I wake up, I won't have any spoons because I used them all up the day before.
Gotcha.
And I overdid it. It took too
Yeah.
much of myself, too much of my available energy out to do these things. Well, maybe you
Yeah.
give 3 spoons to social interactions, you give 2 spoons to house care or
Mm-hmm.
taking care of the home, and then you have another 3 spoons for kids. And if you burn out your last 2 spoons, you might be in bed for 3 days.
Yeah. No, that's so I like that. I like that on a few different levels. I like that on a level of you're providing a measurement for people, because there are a lot of people that I say, okay, well, you have to understand the things that you do in a day are going to affect how your other days are going to be. And you have to kind of, yeah, you kind of have to measure and allocate energy and effort. But I also like how you even bring in the social aspect, the um, different environment aspect, and how that can potentially change the measurement or what have you. I really like that, so I'll definitely have to um, look into that, think about that a little bit
Yeah,
more.
because even the environment of the space that we're caring for people in, is
Right.
it inviting? Is it clean? Is it
Right.
minimalist? Is it like cluttered? Is it
Mm-hmm.
organized? Right? Like your brain is processing all this information.
Right.
When I walk in here, are things in place? Or think of it, even matters when you're running behind and you run up to them and you're already winded because you're running so far behind from your last client that you greet them already like behind.
Right.
You've now affected their therapy.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? All of that matters. All of those pieces matter on how you approach them.
Mm-hmm.
Are you calm when you get there? Do they know that you're not already behind
Right.
and you're going to really actually listen to what I said? Because if you're running behind and you run up to the next client and you start asking them what's going on or how they're feeling, you're still processing maybe some notes from the last session. You're maybe still like trying to figure out what they're saying. Like your brain is still too mixed up. You're not present
Mm-hmm.
with the person you're with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
No.
there's,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's you're not only doing that, but you're also, you mentioned like the environment that the person's in. You're also having an effect of what their experience is. So yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, we don't care
Um,
enough about our environment that we're
yeah.
actually, that the organism, I'm going to just call this an organism because we are, it's not dehumanizing in any way because we are an organism, but we don't care enough about the environment the organism is in because we are our environment.
Right.
We become our environment. So we have to care about the environment that in which we are treating the people that are coming to see us.
Right.
Whether
That
that's the
also
sound
in
that's playing, the
right.
acoustics, the fabrics, the materials, the metrics between intervals of sessions. So I have
Yeah.
30 minutes between every session. That way I'm relaxed
You
and
can
calm
reset.
by the
Yeah.
time the next
Yep.
person comes in.
Yep. Right. Absolutely.
Right? You can't have 5 minutes in between people and expect to have all of your thoughts processed from the previous session and going
Yeah.
into the next person.
Yeah.
Right?
5 minutes. Some places have 0 minutes, and some people overlap. Like,
right. So you're not the interval, the black and the white, just like in
yeah.
music or anything. You have to have the black and the white. You have to have the interval. That
Yeah.
metric, that simple metric of time in between, that the therapist gets to rest, things get reset, things are put back
Right.
in their place where they're supposed to be, like everything is put back
Right.
where it is.
Yeah.
That way the
So
next
you're not
person
even.
coming in
Yeah.
has the exact same experience as everybody else that comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's vital. It's vital. So important. I mean, and it gets overlooked far too often, I think, by, myself included. I know in past I've maybe picking something up while or organizing as I'm speaking to someone, when in reality it probably should have been done, and like you said, been in place, and make sure that that is the experience everybody gets, right? Everything's kind of in orderly position, and reset, and you're not distracted as a clinician, and you're not distracting them from what they're experiencing. So yeah, so true. Um, what are we're gonna keep going. What are the three things in your life besides your family, friends, and career that you're very passionate about?
Well, learning for sure. So
Yeah, I
learning
was
in all
gonna guess
aspects.
that one.
Learning in all aspects. I mean, we're one of the guys I used to live with, a roommate. He said it the best way. It's life's forever student.
Right.
Because you're constantly like. There's a quote that I had that came to me about a month ago, and it was, "It's not how much we know; it's how much we notice."
Mm, I like
Because
that.
right now we have as much information as you can possibly handle in your phone, in your pocket.
Right.
All the information, the entire world is in your pocket.
That's right.
But if you don't notice the surroundings around you, to apply the information that you have in front of you, it's pointless.
Yeah. No, that's right. I like that. Say that again. It's
Right?
not what you know, but it's what you notice.
Yeah.
I like
It's
that.
not what you know; it's what you notice.
What else?
So the other thing is there's a whole group of us. We do a lot of music festivals. So that was where the play part came back into my world. Was someone took me to Bonnaroo back in 2011, and I was the khakis and polo shirt. I work in corporate kind of guy. I grew up my whole life working to be like this perfect like business person. And they take me to Bonnaroo, and I see all these people my age and older all running around, like doing anything and whatever, dressed however they want, playing around, doing who knows what. And I was like, this is weird. Like you're allowed to do this when you're this age. Like, this is crazy. And that was the idea of play that first came back into my life. And in 2014 or 2013, I went with a few friends. And then in 2014, there's a few of us that were like, there's a different kind of camping there. It's called group camping. And you have to have 25 friends to be able to get a spot in this area of camping. And so we're like, well, let's create a Facebook group to find, because how do you get 25 of your closest friends to camp together or go to one big thing together? It costs a lot of money. And so we're like, we'll create a Facebook group, and anybody you think might be interested, just put them in there, and we'll see what we end up with. So at the end of 2013, we had 680 people in our Facebook group.
Oh.
And the very first year in 2014, 103 complete strangers bought passes together to camp together.
Wow.
So
That's
103
crazy.
people from all over the country, all over the United States,
Yeah.
convened into this place with a third of an acre, and it was complete chaos.
I can imagine.
It was like there wasn't enough logistics to go
Right.
into
Yeah.
that.
Coming from. Yeah.
For like all of this, we've never done it before. It was the first time,
Your
and it
head
was like
didn't
first time in it,
explode.
and we have 100 people to figure out. And some people couldn't camp. We didn't have enough room, and it was just like, it was complete madness. Well, then Sunday morning rolled around, and everybody got instruments out. And all of a sudden we had this giant sing along, and it was amazing. Like everybody realized that we're here for music. We all love music.
Right.
And we had
Right.
this amazing connection happen.
Right.
So 2015, I took over all of the logistics. I'm like,
There you
I've
go.
done event planning my whole life. I've done logistics my whole life. I was like, I'll take over the math part. You guys just like, we'll create committees and we'll just put all this thing together. Well, we left in 2015, and one of our friends put in our message group, she was like, you guys realize we're in the Rolling Stone? I was like, what? And we made the top 50 things at Bonnaroo that year, top 50 things they saw at Bonnaroo that year in 2015 in the Rolling Stone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. So
that's cool.
And now we've been friends ever since. We've had 3 weddings in our group now of people that met in our group.
That's
and
very cool.
We just travel all over the country together, and it's
very neat. That's very neat.
So my girlfriend and I, when we met, we had 100 mutual friends before we actually met each other.
There you go. Yeah. Wow.
So pretty wild.
Cool.
Let's think of the other one. I think just nature. Like I'm a big nature person. Like I was out there this morning. I was out in Umstead, and that's my reset. Like that's my one of the books I'm reading right now is The Third Decision. It's How to Be an Intentional Entrepreneur. And he talks about it being his little Paris, like somewhere that you go that you shut everything off, you shut it down, like that is your spot. So I always tell people this because I think it's very important, no matter how old we are, is you need to have a runaway spot.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a spot that other people can know where it's at. But when life gets really hard, when things are just on the rocks, whether it's with your spouse or your partner or like business or whatever, that you can go to that's private enough that you can cry, you can scream, you can laugh, you can whatever you have to do to find self back. You have to zero back out. So I have my closest one is in my office, which is a completely dark room with no windows. And I'll go there and sit in absolute darkness, complete darkness for like anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour with no phone, no light, no anything, and just sit in complete darkness and reset. And then I have one that's a walking distance from my house and my apartment, which is like a giant, it's part of like the bedrock. So it's about 12 feet wide and 40 feet long. It's in a creek. It's a giant rock. And I've always gone down there, like when I was building the cube in the beginning and like all this stuff was going wrong. And I was like in meltdown mode. And I was like, I just literally ran away. Like a little kid, I ran down to the rock and I just stayed down there. And then Umstead, if I walk down Loblolly Trail down to like either the rocks or down to the bridge, that's my deeper spot. Like that takes me time to get there. I only go in the middle of the week during the day when nobody else is there. So that's my deeper spot that I go to like fully erase or fully like reconnect back to nature, reconnect myself back to home.
Yeah.
So
I really like that. That is so important. I mean, nature itself, but also having that spot.
You gotta have your spot, man. You gotta have a place to go.
That kind of helps you just come down and reset. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta find self. You gotta zero back out to self.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Take it all in, figure out what the heck you're doing, why you're doing it. Yeah.
Right.
What are 3 books that you enjoy recommending or gifting?
One of the best books I ever read, one of the guys I was teaching with for a long time, he'd always bring it up in every single class I helped teach with or assist teaching with. And after I read it, I realized reading it, it changed the way I do therapy forever. Like it really helped base like how I think. And that's the 4 Agreements.
Oh yeah. It's a great book.
I mean, it's such a strong way of, you know, words matter. The way you think matters. Like, you know, your words are very powerful.
Yeah.
There was a woman that came in. I was just learning all the muscle testing stuff, and it was always like pass fail, and like you're learning it a different way in class, and then you try to learn a different way outside of class. This woman came in. I was like, oh, this is wrong, and this failed, and whatever, and like I just jumped right into it. And she came back in like 2 weeks later, and she goes, "You're probably just going to tell me what's all wrong with me again."
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "Holy shit! I ruined this person's life for like 2 weeks." And like, that was the first moment where I realized communication mattered that much.
Right.
What we say matters that much. Like I can't stress that enough. Like the words that come out of your mouth, like the whole nocebo thing. like telling somebody that's the worst they've ever seen it, or like, this is really bad,
Right.
or whatever. Like, you really have to watch what comes out of your mouth.
Right. You do.
You have to.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a balancing act for sure.
yeah. The second one is The Hidden Life of Trees.
I've heard of that one. I've
It
never written it though.
completely blew my mind. I'll give you the two of the things that like floored me, and it's all the things you think about, like, like everything's connected, like we're all part of something, right? Like, it's all the
Yeah.
same thing. There's some communication there.
Yeah.
And when they said in the book, because it's all based in science, it's written by a scientist, they said if an invasive species bites the leaf of a tree, the tree can detect the DNA of the bug that bit it, send a sound wave out into the forest, attract another bug that will eat that bug.
What? No way.
Yes.
What? I got to read that book. That'd be fascinating.
Dude,
I know
it
some
blew my
friends that would
mind.
like that book
The same
too.
thing with giraffe. Like, they reference like a giraffe. Like, say a giraffe is eating too much foliage from a tree. The tree realizes that it's already been eaten too much, and it changes the flavor of its leaves to bitter to chase the giraffe away.
Huh.
And then it'll send that same sound signal out to the rest of the trees in its network to change their leaves to bitter to get the giraffe completely out of its area to save the
Wow.
tree.
That's wild. I got to read that.
Yeah, it completely floored me. And I was like, you think you know like what you're looking at until you read that, and you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at all.
Yeah.
Like,
My mind is completely blown. Yeah. That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah. Because in Germany, they're so protective of their forests that
Yeah.
they won't cut a tree down with power equipment in
Mm.
certain forests that are protected because it scares the trees. It harms the trees.
Mm.
So they do it with a handsaw and horses.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's so
Um,
interesting. I got to read
yeah.
it. Yeah.
So the third book is called The Book,
Oh.
and it's by Alan Watts. And it's on the taboo of knowing who you are. And it's the most philosophical book that'll really unwind like a lot of our deep-seated like thoughts of how the world works, or what we think about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, or how like that we're something separate from the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not. We're like, it's it, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can name whatever you want. You can call it God, you can call it
The
Jesus, you
universe.
can call it whatever you
Yeah.
want, the universe or whatever. But in the grand scheme of it, like, how do we know that our entire universe isn't just the atom or a cell of another thing?
Yeah. Right.
Right? We could just be inside one cell of a whole other thing.
Right.
I was listening to this woman talk about it. They said we're so zoomed in with electron microscopes now. Like, we always see like an atom with our nucleus and our electrons spinning around. They said technically we're so far into our universe that it's comparable to a speck of dust in a cathedral.
Mm.
So the nucleus is the speck of dust, and the electrons are as far out as the walls of a cathedral.
Yeah. Wow. And then,
So
yeah.
so
Wow.
this blew my mind, because she goes, technically, based on where we're at right now, a human is 99.9999% space.
Air. Yeah. Space. Yep.
Yeah. So we're
Where did
basically
I
a
just hear
hologram.
that? Where did I just hear that?
Yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast. The Mindset Mentor, I think the guy's name is, and he was talking about how literally we are, yeah, that much space, and that our body is energy, right? And so you have to figure out what is going on with your body's energy, because that is pretty much putting the little bit of you in the space. That's what you are: space and energy, and then some matter. Yeah, it's very interesting to think. Is that in the book as well? That aspect,
It kind
or
of
is that
gets
something
around that
different?
same idea of like, not that specific thing. The book was published in 1966.
Wow. Yeah. So
So
about
it's
before its time a little bit.
right. It's very before its
Or
time. It'll go into a lot of like how we look at technology and how we've used technology wrong,
yeah.
because he talks about it a lot. This is back in the 60s and 70s when he was writing all this and talking about it. He goes, the technology they're building is designed to remove us from nature. instead of putting us farther into nature. Right? We're supposed to live within
or
nature.
understanding it more.
Right. We spend all of our time trying to control the wobble or control the oops of nature. Right. Because we want to know what people are going to do. And they started doing that with all the data collecting, because now they can use positive and negative reinforcement and propaganda to know what we're thinking or how to get us to think a certain way. Because they learned really quickly that a negative, like a punishment, only keeps somebody at bay as long as they remember the punishment.
Right.
And then they'll go back and do what they did again. But if they use positive reinforcement, which is social media, then we keep getting positive hits of dopamine of going, ooh, I did something good. Ooh, I did something good. And then we keep doing that because we want more good. So then they learn that they can control people by giving them the positive reinforcement.
Right. Yeah. It's terrifying. That's another topic for another day, though. That's
Definitely.
All right, 3 quick questions then to finish up, and then I want to give you an opportunity to kind of promote. You got a weekly thing going on, and then give people some of your information. But real quick, if you were to be an animal, what would you be, and why?
Oh, stump me on that one.
10 words or less.
10 words or less. I would say a lion.
Okay.
Just
why?
Because I guess it's around the idea of nobility and respect, and maybe it's the way we perceive the lion. But lions are designed to hunt. Like they're always out to get. They're always on the hunt, and they're not going to stop hunting till they get what they want.
Okay, I like it.
And that's something I've always done, is to, like, they'll never quit. Right. Just if you can only move a half an inch today, then move a half an inch today. And you know what? Congratulations, you moved a half an inch today.
Yeah.
So,
well, if you're a Dave Ramsey fan, you might consider yourself a gazelle then, because you run away from that lion like your life depended on it.
Now I'm catching gazelle. Right. That's what I'm doing.
There you go. If you were, or if you could, what is your favorite ice cream?
I would say I'm more of a gelato fan, and there's some raspberry crumble gelato that I really like, and a blueberry crumble gelato that I really like.
Nice.
I like fruit mixed with my ice cream.
Okay.
It's either that or I go all the way off the deep end into the cookie dough, and that's just dangerous.
Yeah, that is dangerous. All right, and then last, what if you were to have a billboard on the side of a busy highway for thousands and thousands and thousands of people to see each day, what would that billboard say?
What would it say? Everything matters and nothing matters. It's up to you to find the difference.
Yep. I like it. That's another similar. I like that. Yeah. Everything matters and nothing matters. It's up to you to find the difference. All right. I'll let everyone ponder that. So tell us about, you have a weekly event online due to the pandemic. You're made it a little bit virtual. Tell us a little bit about what you're offering and how people can get involved.
Yeah, so Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. every Wednesday. It's called the Creative Movement Workshop. And I'll be using the blocks, and you can use any random objects you have. 4 or 5 random objects is what I suggest. They can be shoe boxes, shoes, toys, anything. It's very kid friendly. Kids have a lot of fun with it because it allows them to kind of giggle and play and roll around in all different fun ways. And what I'll do is kind of go through a little introduction, and we'll start off as, like, in regards to doing the actual exercise itself of the blocks, we'll start with 1 touch point, like left elbow, and 1 restriction, right hand. And then we'll have another little discussion. I'll pick a talk point, and then we'll do 1 touch point, 2 restrictions. And then the final one, we'll do 1 touch point, 3 restrictions. So the best part about that is that you're going to get the same effect, So I tested this out with numerous people that were in here in person with the blocks prior to,
Mm-hmm.
and did beta testing online to make sure I didn't lose the effect
Mm-hmm.
that the blocks give people in regards to mindfulness and flow and being present. And even what you feel in your body, the changes you feel in
Mm-hmm.
your body, doing it virtually.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a chance to experience what it's like to do the blocks
Mm-hmm.
in the comfort of your own home. So now you control the environment. You have all of the power back because you're going to move however you're capable or whatever you're capable to do. So it gives you a chance to experience everything that I do in a virtual way. You're going to create completely randomized instinctual movement in your own safety of home.
Yeah.
And whenever you're done, you can just turn it off and walk away. Like there's
Yeah.
no hard feeling. So it's just
Yeah.
stay as long as you want and take off. So there's no cost. It's complimentary.
I love it.
So come in and
I'll
join
have
us. It's
to, I'll have to get the link and put it in the show notes um yeah, definitely get that link and put it in the show notes, and I'll have to join one Wednesday myself when I'm not treating someone. So
yeah.
that'd be great. That'd be great. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to pick your brain anymore about any of the stuff that we discussed today, whether they want to speak to you about massage, whether they want to speak with you about getting involved with body work or movement therapy? What are the best ways to follow you or reach out to you?
Okay. So I have Instagram, which is infinite_movements. There is Facebook, which is Move Massage Raleigh. And then my website currently, we're actually working on a new website and we'll have a new URL up. But the one right now is Neural Movement Therapy, NEURAL movementtherapy.com. And you can also email me at joe@neuralmovementtherapy.com. And I
what
am
is
set up
it?
right now where I'm seeing, I'm trying to be very COVID friendly for more higher risk people.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there is more of a higher risk but still needs massage, I'm doing 1 75-minute session per day. So I'm in a KN95 5-layer mask doubled up with a cloth mask and a full face shield. And there's 24 hours in between each client. So if you are of a higher risk and you need somewhere to go, there's just me in the building. My girlfriend has me still in pretty much authoritarian lockdown. So my circle is very small. So it's as safe as we can get it. So,
That's good.
so yeah,
Okay.
so if you're
Yeah,
looking for
that's
something a
great.
little more like,
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. What is the website going to be down the line?
well, I don't want to hand that out yet because they're actually in the middle of building it still. So it is
Okay.
live to look at, but it's not finished up yet. So I want to hold off
Okay.
on that. So
All right.
I can update
Awesome.
everybody when that gets up in the next few weeks. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, they can, if they're following you on Instagram or Facebook, I'm sure you'll say something about it.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Today was a lot longer than normal, but it was very interesting and very in depth, and I really enjoyed a lot of the conversation we had. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad I was able to get a hold of you and we were able to put this on the schedule quick. I hope everybody else enjoyed. Thank you again. Thank you. And hopefully what we talked about can help someone, whether just by listening or help them start moving or help them find you so that you can help guide them towards whatever they need as well. So thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed. And for now, everyone, please be well and thrive.
Awesome.